The stage lights of America's Got Talent glowed like a sea of stars as the crowd buzzed with anticipation. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his trademark expression calm yet curious. It was just another night of auditions, or so everyone thought. A young Filipino boy stood nervously at the center of the stage. His name was Elias Cruz, barely 14 years old, with a face that carried both innocence and quiet courage. He held the microphone like it was something sacred. His small hands trembled, but his eyes, dark and full of soul, were steady. "Hello there," said Simon, his British accent cutting through the air. "What's your name, and where are you from?" Elias cleared his throat. "My name is Elias Cruz. I'm from the Philippines." The audience clapped politely. A few people waved flags in the crowd. Simon nodded. "And what brings you all the way here?" Elias hesitated. His English was careful, a bit shy, but honest. "I came here because my mama always told me that when you sing with your heart, people will listen. And I want the world to listen." There was a murmur of admiration from the audience. Sofia Vergara smiled warmly. Heidi Klum leaned forward. Simon, though, kept his eyes locked on the boy. "Okay, Elias," he said softly. "What are you going to sing for us?" Elias took a deep breath. "I'm going to sing, You Raise Me Up." The title alone drew a few gasps from the crowd. It was a powerful song, one that only a few dared to perform in such a massive moment. Simon gave a slight nod. "All right then, the stage is yours." The first notes of the instrumental began. Elias stood still, his chest rising and falling like waves. Then, slowly, his voice emerged, soft at first, delicate as morning light. "Greater than, when I am down, and oh my soul so weary." The arena grew silent. Even the faint sound of cameras clicking faded. Elias's voice was pure, crystalline, trembling with emotion. There was something almost otherworldly about it, as if the song itself had found its way into him, not the other way around. Simon's expression softened. His fingers, usually tapping impatiently on the desk, were still. "Greater than, when troubles come, and my heart burden be." Elias closed his eyes. His thoughts drifted far from the crowd, the judges, and the lights. In his mind, he saw his mother. She was sitting in a small nipa hut in Batangas, her face illuminated by a single kerosene lamp. She was coughing, softly, painfully, but smiling at him. "Sing for them, Anik," she had whispered before he left. "Let them feel what I feel when I hear you sing." He had promised her he would. Now, on the AGT stage, he sang not for fame, not for money, but for her. "Greater than, then I am still and wait here in the silence, until you come and sit a while with me." The boy's voice grew stronger, more soaring. It filled the hall, wrapped around the crowd like an embrace. The sound engineer had to lower the mic slightly. Elias was no longer timid. He was rising, bearing his soul in every word. By the time he reached the chorus, even the judges were transfixed. "Greater than, you raise me up, so I can stand on mountains." Simon's eyes blinked rapidly. It wasn't just the beauty of the voice, it was the weight behind it, the honesty that came from pain. Elias had told the producers earlier, in a short pre-interview, that his father had passed away when he was 10. His mother, Maria, had raised him alone, washing clothes for neighbors and singing lullabies at night to keep their spirits alive. But 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with a heart condition. He had sung by her hospital bed every night until the day she no longer woke up. "Greater than, you raise me up, to walk on stormy seas." Elias's voice cracked, just slightly. But that crack made the moment real, human. A wave of emotion swept through the audience. People began wiping tears from their eyes. Sofia Vergara pressed a tissue to her cheek. Heidi's lips trembled. Even the camera operators had their heads bowed, lost in the song. Simon Cowell sat motionless. But his jaw clenched, and his eyes glistened. Something inside him, something he kept buried, was stirring. He remembered his own mother. How she believed in him when no one else did. How he'd once heard her humming "You Raise Me Up" in the kitchen. And now, this small boy from a distant island nation was bringing all that back. "Greater than, you raise me up, to more than I can be." Elias held that last note. It hung in the air, long and trembling, until it faded into silence. For a moment, the entire arena forgot to breathe. Then, like thunder after a storm, the audience erupted. The standing ovation was instantaneous. People were screaming, clapping, crying. The judges rose to their feet. Sofia blew kisses toward the boy. Heidi had tears streaming down her face. Howie Mandel pressed both hands over his heart. Elias stood there, trembling again, but this time from disbelief. He looked out at the thousands of people who were cheering for him, not mocking, not judging, cheering. Simon Cowell still hadn't spoken. He leaned forward slowly, elbows on the desk, staring at the boy. His voice, when it came, was quieter than usual. "Elias," he said, "I've heard you Raise Me Up performed hundreds of times. But I've never heard it sung like that." Elias swallowed, unsure if he should speak. Simon continued, his voice beginning to crack. "There's something about you, something that reminds all of us why we love music in the first place. It's not about perfection, it's about truth. And tonight, you told us the truth." The crowd cheered again, but Simon raised a hand to quiet them. He reached over and pressed the golden buzzer. Confetti exploded from above like a golden storm. Elias gasped, covering his face as tears streamed down his cheeks. The crowd went wild. His dream, his mother's dream, had just come true. Simon stood up, walking toward the stage. It wasn't something he often did. He climbed the steps, meeting the boy who still stood frozen under the glittering rain. Simon placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "That was for your mother, wasn't it?" Elias nodded, unable to speak. Simon's eyes filled again. "She's proud of you, lad. Very proud." Then, for the first time in years, Simon Cowell hugged a contestant. The crowd roared louder than ever before. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the tears streaking Simon's cheeks, a moment that would later go viral worldwide. After the show, backstage, Elias sat in a corner of the green room, still trying to process everything. His manager handed him a towel and a bottle of water. "You did it, kid. You really did it." Elias smiled weakly. I felt her there. My mama. I felt like she was singing with me." He looked down at the small pendant he wore, a tiny heart-shaped locket with his mother's picture inside. Moments later, Simon entered quietly. No cameras this time, just him. He sat beside Elias and sighed. "You know, I've been doing this for a long time," he said. "And I've seen stars come and go. But rarely do I see something that reminds me of humanity's heart. You did that tonight." Elias looked up. "Thank you, Mr. Simon." "Call me Simon," he said with a faint smile. "And remember, whatever happens in this competition, you already won." The journey continues. Weeks passed. Elias's audition went viral on YouTube, amassing over 200 million views in a month. Headlines around the world read, "Filipino boy brings Simon Cowell to tears. Golden buzzer moment shakes AGT. You raise me up," a voice from the Philippines that touched the world. Messages flooded in from every corner of the globe, fans, music producers, even celebrities. Churches played his performance on screens during Sunday services. Parents told their children about the boy who sang for love, not fame. When Elias returned for the semifinals, he chose another powerful song, Footprints in the Sand. Once again, he left the judges speechless. But the moment people would never forget was still that first audition, the one where he made the unshakable Simon Cowell cry. The finale, the final round came months later. The arena was bigger, brighter, the stakes higher than ever. Elias walked onto the stage, this time more confident. He wore a white suit his relatives in Manila had sewn by hand. Simon greeted him warmly. "Welcome back, Elias. How are you feeling tonight?" Elias smiled. "I'm ready, sir. I'm singing this one for all the people who lifted me up when I felt small." The song began, an original piece titled, "Wings of My Mother." He had written it himself, with the help of AGT's music team. The lyrics spoke of faith, resilience, and love that never dies. His voice soared higher than ever before, raw and radiant. When he hit the final note, the entire stage seemed to glow. Once again, there were tears everywhere. Simon rose slowly, clapping with both hands, and said through watery eyes, "You came here as a boy with a dream. Tonight, you leave as an artist who reminded us all what love sounds like." After the lights, Elias didn't win the competition. Another act took home the trophy, but it didn't matter. Offers poured in from record labels, charities, and concert organizers around the world. But more than fame, Elias chose purpose. He began touring schools, hospitals, and orphanages, singing not for the cameras, but for those who needed hope. One day, in an interview, he said, "People think I made Simon Cowell cry. But the truth is, I just sang for my mother. The rest was God's doing." Simon saw that interview months later. He smiled faintly, remembering that night, the trembling boy, the song, the tears. He whispered to himself, "You did more than sing, Elias. You healed." Years later, 10 years passed. Elias Cruz was now a global artist, performing in sold-out arenas and humanitarian events. His foundation, the Maria Cruz Hope Project, funded music programs for underprivileged children in Southeast Asia. But every year, he returned to the Philippines. To the same small house. To the same tree where he used to sing for his mother. He would bring his guitar, sit under the stars, and softly hum. "Greater than, you raise me up, so I can stand on mountains." And sometimes, he swore he could hear her voice singing along with him.